I remember the night everything changed. It was late, past midnight, when I heard the whispering outside my bedroom door. Soft, hurried, nervous. My name, Eloria, floated between the cracks like something sinful. At 58 years old, you'd think I was too old for secrets to be spoken about me, but life never stops surprising you. Sometimes in the cruelest ways. I sat up slowly, my joints aching the way they always did after a long day at work. My daughter, Marin, thought those aches made me useless. My son, Carver, thought they made me slow. They both forgot something I had learned decades earlier: the body gets tired, but the mind? The mind sharpens with every cut life gives you. And life had given me plenty. Their voices outside grew louder. I heard Carver say, "If we don't do it now, she'll cling to the house until she dies. We'll never get to sell it." Sell it. My home. My husband's home. The place where I had raised them, fed them, prayed for them, gone without sleep for them. It took everything inside me not to open the door right then. But sometimes silence is more powerful than a scream. Silence lets the truth sharpen itself. I listened. "We'll tell her the doctor said she shouldn't be living alone anymore," Marin whispered. "We'll say it's for her safety. She's emotional. She'll believe whatever we tell her." Emotional. Funny how children use the very heart you poured into them as proof that you're weak. Carver sighed. "Good. We'll do it tomorrow. I already talked to the bank about transferring the property after she signs." My heart froze. The bank. My children had gone to the bank behind my back. A small part of me wanted to believe I misheard. But I didn't. That's one thing age gives you: your hearing becomes sharper right around the time your trust wears thin. I sat on the edge of the bed until their voices faded, until the house quieted again. I didn't cry. I'd done plenty of crying in the years since my husband, Orion, passed away. He had been the one who kept balance, who softened their greed before it became hunger. Without him, something in them, something dark, had bloomed. And now it wanted to devour me. I stayed awake all night, listening to my own heartbeat and wondering where I had gone wrong. But by sunrise, I realized something that steadied me. I hadn't raised bad children. I had raised children who made bad choices. And bad choices eventually get paid for. One way or another. When morning came, I pretended nothing had happened. I rose early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table reading the old newspaper I had read a dozen times already. The routine calmed my nerves. At exactly 8:14 a.m., they came. Marin first. She always tried to speak before Carver, as if eager to prove she had been the mastermind. Then Carver, standing just behind her, arms crossed over his chest like he was preparing for business negotiations. "Mom," Marin said with an exaggerated sigh, "we need to talk." I folded the paper and looked up with the gentleness of a woman who already knew the knife coming her way but had decided not to flinch. "Of course." Carver swallowed. "We talked to Dr. Wexler." "No, you didn't," I cut in calmly. They blinked. I stood slowly. "Dr. Wexler retired last year. The new doctor hasn't even seen me yet." Their faces changed, just slightly, but I saw the flicker of fear. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. I wiped the counter unnecessarily, buying them the time they needed to adjust their story. "Try again," I said quietly. Marin tried to smile. "Mom, we just think the house is too much for you. We want what's best." Carver nodded quickly. "Yeah, what's best? What's best?" People always use those words when they're about to do something selfish. "Tell me the truth," I said, turning to face them fully. And that's when they broke. Not out of guilt, not even out of shame. They broke because they realized I wasn't as fragile as they hoped. "We're selling the house, Mom." Marin burst out. "We're drowning in debts and this house is the only asset we can use." There it was. Not concern. Not love. Not fear for my safety. Money. Always money. And where will I go? I asked quietly. Carver's garage apartment is empty, Marin said, like she was offering me a gift. Carver quickly added, temporarily. Temporarily. A word that can stretch into forever when people no longer want you. I stared at them for a long moment. I had stared at them this way when they were children, after they had lied, or stolen cookies, or blamed each other for messes on the floor. Back then, they eventually confessed. Now they stared back like strangers wearing the faces of my children. So this is what you've decided, I said finally. Marin relaxed, thinking I had surrendered. It's really for the best, Mom. For the best, I echoed softly. I didn't fight them. I didn't argue. Sometimes the greatest power you have is letting people believe they've won, right before their own choices break them. Within 2 days, they had everything in motion. The lines they fed me were rehearsed, polished, and spoken with the confidence of children who believed they were smarter than their mother. They weren't. By the end of the week, I packed my bags and walked out of my own home. Not because I had nowhere else to go, but because leaving quietly gives you the cleanest vantage point to watch karma at work. The night I left, I looked back at the house. My heart tightened, yes. But not from pain. From clarity. People forget that mothers are observers. We gather information the way trees collect rings. Quietly, layer by layer, year after year. My children forgot that I had been learning all my life. And life had taught me how to survive. Carver's garage apartment was small, cold, and smelled faintly of gasoline and mold. But it had a lock. That was something. He popped his head in once that first evening. If you need groceries, just ask, he said. I knew he wanted me dependent. That was his first mistake. Instead, I found a job the next morning. At 58, with arthritis and a back that protested every bend, I worked the early shift at Portia's diner. I washed dishes, wiped tables, swept floors. My hands cracked and bled a little the first week. My shoulders burned. But the burn reminded me I was alive. Working reminded me that I wasn't finished yet. Being underestimated reminded me of my strength. People think survival is desperate and ugly. But sometimes, survival is a quiet rebellion. A calm, steady refusal to die. I refused. The other servers, younger women with quick tempers and quicker gossip, called me Miss ELO. I liked that. It felt like my new beginning deserved a new name. But what I didn't realize, what I couldn't have imagined, was that my children's betrayal would lead me directly into something far stranger, far darker, and eventually, far more victorious than I had ever planned. It began with a phone call. Not to me. To them. 1 week after they forced me out. The quiet of the apartment was broken by the sharp ring of my phone. But the caller ID wasn't mine, it was synced to Carver's system since he paid the bills. It said, Bank Manager. My heartbeat stilled. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Hello? I said softly. A man cleared his throat. Yes, may I speak with Carver Orlan or Marin Hathaway? This is regarding the property transfer of the Dunlin Street home, very urgent. I closed my eyes. The house. My house. So it wasn't finished yet. Neither of them is available, I said calmly. But you can tell me what the urgent matter is. The banker hesitated. Are you Aloria Orlan? Yes. Mrs. Orlan. I think you should know, there is a problem with the documents they tried to submit. A very serious problem. My pulse quickened, but my voice stayed calm. What kind of problem? He exhaled heavily. The property cannot be transferred. According to the archive, your late husband left a secondary clause that your children didn't disclose. And this clause changes everything. Everything. I felt my old strength rise. Quietly. Steadily. Powerfully. The banker continued, Mrs. Orlin, legally, the house belongs to you. And you alone. I felt something inside me shift. Not relief. Not victory. A storm. A quiet, poetic storm. The kind that brings justice with it. I thanked the banker and hung up the phone slowly. In the silence, I whispered to myself. They took me out of my house. But they're the ones about to lose everything. I stood still for a long time. And then, very slowly, I smiled. I didn't sleep that night. Not because of fear. Fear had left me the moment truth stepped into my life like a long-lost friend. I stayed awake because for the first time since Orion passed, I felt him near me, as if he had left that hidden clause like a final whisper, Eloria, you are not alone. Not now. Not ever. I sat in the tiny garage apartment with its single lamp flickering like it, too, was caught between two worlds, weakness and awakening. I kept hearing the banker's voice echo in my mind. The house belongs to you, and you alone. My children had no idea what was coming. But justice works slowly, beautifully slowly. The next morning, I rose before sunrise, made myself a small cup of instant coffee, and walked quietly out into the cool air. I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer. The walls felt tight, like they were holding secrets I didn't want pressed against me anymore. I needed air. I needed clarity. I walked down the street until I reached a small park. It was empty. Just me, and the slow, steady hum of awakening. I sat on the old wooden bench, ran my fingers along the cracked paint, and whispered to myself. They thought they buried me. But I'm a seed. I didn't cry. At my age, tears become rare. Not because we're stronger, but because we learn which battles deserve water, and which deserve fire. This battle needed fire. Carver came home from work around noon. I could hear him from the window. He always slammed his car door like it had personally offended him. Moments later, he climbed the stairs to the garage apartment and knocked loudly. Mom? You in there? I stayed silent. He knocked again, harder. Mom. I opened the door slowly, meeting his annoyed eyes with a calmness that unsettled him. What? I asked. He blinked. He wasn't expecting directness. He wasn't expecting confidence. He was expecting the woman he had pushed out of her own life, the quiet, broken version of me. He underestimated me again. We need to go back to the bank later, he said. Some document issue. They messed up, not our fault. We just need to clarify. I let the silence sit between us, letting him feel its weight. Finally, I said, no. His eyebrows jerked up. No. I said what I meant. He scoffed. Mom, don't start playing stubborn now. This is serious. I know, I said softly. Deadly serious, just not for me. His expression shifted, confusion first, fear second, then frustration. What are you talking about? I stepped back inside and closed the door. Not slamming. Just closing. Quiet power is something some children never learn until it's too late. That evening at Portia's diner, I worked silently, letting my mind wander between memories and possibilities. The clatter of dishes, the smell of grease, the hum of conversations, they all blended into a background song that felt oddly comforting. Around 8 p.m., when the rush slowed, a woman walked in and took a seat at the counter. She wore a beige coat too thin for the weather, her hair tied back loosely, and her eyes were gentle but knowing. Coffee, Please, she said softly. I poured her a cup. She looked at me for a long moment and then said, "You look like someone who knows too much." I froze. What do you mean? I asked. She stirred her coffee. People with easy lives have smooth faces. But people who've seen betrayal? Their eyes carry thunderstorms. I swallowed. And you? I asked her. Which one are you? She gave the faintest smile. Darling, I'm the type who walks into storms willingly. Her name was Selma Graves, a 40-something woman with a voice like velvet and a past that clung to her like perfume, light but impossible to ignore. She came to the diner 3 nights in a row. And on the 4th night, she stayed until closing. I know you're going through something, she said gently, leaning on the counter. I don't need to know details. But I want to tell you something my grandmother told me. I leaned closer. Her voice lowered. When someone tries to steal your home, it's not the walls they want. It's the version of you that lived inside those walls. Protect her. I felt something inside me crack. Not break. Crack open. Like a seed. She looked at me with those soft, sharp eyes. Don't fight them with anger, Eloria. Fight them with knowledge. People fear what they don't understand. I whispered, I'm not angry. She nodded. I know. That's why you're going to win. 2 days later, just before my shift, the bank called again. This time, I answered immediately. Mrs. Orlin, the voice said urgently, your children just left the branch. They were upset. I smiled faintly. I can imagine. There's more, he said. They attempted to override the deed again, but the legal department flagged the account. They cannot sell, transfer, or legally manage any part of the property. I inhaled slowly. And they know this? Yes. They demanded explanation, but the clause your husband created is ironclad. And there is something else. My stomach tightened. Yes? There was a pause. A significant account tied to the property, one your husband established silently, has now fully transferred into your name due to the clause being activated. I didn't breathe. What account? A savings bond portfolio. Very old. Very large. Mrs. Orlin, you may not know this, but you are now, well, financially secure for the rest of your life. My fingers trembled slightly. Not from shock. From understanding. Orion had known. He had known our children better than I wanted to admit. He had left me not just protected, but armed. Thank you, I whispered. No, Mrs. Orlin, the banker said. Your husband did the thanking. Decades ago. I hung up, my heart beating in slow, powerful waves. I felt Orion's presence again. And for the first time in years. I felt chosen. Protected. Ready. That night, around 11 p.m., there was a pounding on the apartment door. Both of them this time. Carver and Marin. Mom. Open the door. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I moved with the grace of someone who finally understood her own worth. When I opened the door, their faces were flushed, panicked, sweaty. They looked like little children who realized the monster under the bed was real. Carver was the first to speak. Why didn't you tell us about the clause? Why didn't you read the will thoroughly? I countered calmly. Marin stepped forward. Mom, this is serious. The bank says you have full control. You can't do that to us. Do what? I asked. Own my own home? That house should have been ours to manage. Carver shouted. Why? I asked quietly. Because you decided it? Or because you wanted to sell the only place your father worked his whole life to give me? Their silence was louder than their shouting. Carver's voice cracked. We needed money. I nodded. Ah. And you decided that was more important than my stability. Marin wiped her face. Mom, please, we can figure something out. For a moment, I looked at them, really looked at them. My children. My blood. The mouths I fed. The bodies I carried. The souls I tried to teach the difference between want and need. They had betrayed me. But I wasn't here for revenge. I was here for truth. You kicked me out, I said softly. You lied to me. You went behind my back. And now that you realize your plan failed, you want to negotiate. Carver clenched his jaw. We're family. Family? I asked calmly. Family protects each other. Family doesn't abandon their mother for a payout. Silence again. But then something unexpected happened. I saw it. Regret. Not enough to undo what they did. Not enough to make them virtuous. But enough to make them human again. Mom, Marin whispered. What are you going to do? I took a slow breath. I'm moving out, I said. Into my house. Their eyes widened. And you, I continued, are going to learn something that all adults must learn eventually. Choices have consequences. I stepped back and closed the door gently. Their voices rose outside, confused, desperate, pleading. But I did not open the door again. The next morning, I packed my things. It didn't take long. Partly because I didn't have much left. But mostly because I didn't need much anymore. Before walking out, I turned off the single lamp, touched the doorframe gently, and whispered. Thank you for sheltering me through the storm. But I'm not hidden anymore. I walked down the stairs slowly, each step steady and strong. Selma was waiting outside in her old beige coat, leaning on her car. You ready? She asked. I nodded. Didn't expect backup, I said with a small smile. She grinned. Honey, I saw that fire in your eyes the night we met. I'm just here to witness the blaze. When I stepped onto my old porch again, the air felt different. Heavier. Charged. Like the universe itself had been waiting. I unlocked the door slowly. The hinges creaked like an old friend waking from sleep. And when I stepped inside, the scent of my past, lavender candles, old books, Orion's cologne still faint in the closet, wrapped around me like a long, overdue embrace. I closed the door behind me. And for the first time in weeks, I was home. When I stepped back into my house, the air felt wrong. Not dangerous. Not haunted. Just wrong in the way something feels when it's been touched by hands that never loved it. There were little signs everywhere. A broken vase, swept into a corner. Marin's perfume still lingering faintly in the hallway. Carver's muddy boot prints on my living room rug. They had walked through my life like it was already theirs. But not anymore. I walked from room to room, touching the walls the way you touch an old friend's face after a long separation. The house was dusty, sad, abandoned, but alive. Waiting for me. Waiting for the woman who had survived being thrown out so quietly that no one noticed the storm gathering around her. I stopped in Orion's study. Everything was exactly as he had left it, the books, the oak desk, the framed photograph of him and me on our 25th anniversary. He had his arm around me, his smile warm, his eyes soft. He looked proud. And suddenly, something inside me broke open. Not in pain. In purpose. I'm here, I whispered to him. And I'm going to do this right. I didn't know that the next few days would reveal secrets. That not even Orion had told me when he was alive. 3 days after I moved back in, I began cleaning the study. I dusted the bookshelves first, wiping each spine gently, whispering the titles the way priests whisper old prayers. When I reached the bottom drawer of Orion's desk, something felt off. The drawer moved too easily. Too softly. Too strangely. I pulled it all the way out. Behind the drawer, taped to the back wall of the desk, was an envelope. Yellowed, brittle, addressed in Orion's handwriting. For Eloria, only if they turn against you. My knees almost gave out. I sat on the study floor, holding the letter with trembling fingers, breathing in the faint scent of old ink. For a long time, I couldn't open it. Because opening it meant acknowledging something. That my husband had known what our children were capable of. Maybe long before I did. Finally, with a deep breath, I tore the top and unfolded the paper. The handwriting was shaky but deliberate. Orion had written it during his last months, when his hands trembled and his body grew weak. My love. If you are reading this, it means the children have chosen a hard path. Not because you failed, but because they've forgotten who raised them. If they ever betray you, know that I prepared everything. You are protected. You are provided for. And above all, you are stronger than they will ever understand. But there is one more thing. A truth I could never tell you while I was alive, because it would have broken your heart. A truth about Marin and Carver. And about the money they think you owe them. I stopped reading. My breath hitched. My pulse hammered. There was more. More than the hidden clause. More than the account. Orion continued. I discovered something years ago, quietly, painfully. Something about their financial choices, their habits, their secret debts. I kept it from you to protect your peace. But if they turn on you, open the red binder in the bottom safe. You'll understand everything then. And you'll know exactly what to do. Your strength will be the justice they never saw coming. Always yours. Orion. I dropped the letter onto my lap. My skin prickled. My heart shook. A red binder. In the bottom safe. I didn't even know there was a bottom safe. I stood up and searched the study. On the far right side of the bottom bookshelf, a wooden panel looked slightly different, like it had been removed once and carefully replaced. I pushed gently. It clicked. A small metal door appeared behind it. A hidden safe. Not the main safe, this one I had never seen before. I remembered the old code we used for everything important, our wedding date. Hands shaking, I entered the numbers. The safe opened. I pulled it out, sat at the desk, and opened it. My breath froze. Page after page, Orion had documented. Marin's private loans. Carver's gambling debts. A failed investment they made years ago using Orion's identity. Credit card statements they hid from us. A list of times they withdrew money from our joint account without telling either of us. Each page was dated. Each page was signed by Orion. He had kept records. He had known they were using him. He had forgiven quietly, hoping they'd change. But he had also prepared for the day they might betray me. Orion, I whispered, my voice breaking, you angel, you brilliant man. Tears fell onto the desk. For years, I had thought he left me unprepared. For years, I had believed I was alone. But the truth was, he had been fighting for me long before I ever knew I'd need to fight for myself. The binder wasn't just evidence. It was power. It was protection. It was justice. And it changed everything. The next week, Marin showed up at my door. I didn't open it at first. I just watched her through the frosted window. She looked older. Tired. Scared. She knocked again. Mom, please. We need to talk. I opened the door slowly. She stepped in with the hesitance of someone entering a courtroom. Her voice trembled. We can't afford the apartment anymore. Carver lost work hours. I made mistakes. We both did. I kept my back straight. My voice calm. What do you need, Marin? She swallowed hard. A place to stay. Just for a little while. We'll figure things out, I promise. I looked at her face. My daughter. My betrayer. My child. For a moment, I saw the girl she used to be, the one who used to hold my hand crossing the street, who used to climb into my bed when she had nightmares. But I also saw the woman she chose to become. And I remembered Orion's letter. I remembered the red binder. I remembered the night they whispered outside my bedroom door, planning my removal. I took a breath. Marin, I said softly, there is room here for grace. But there is no room here for entitlement. She blinked, confused. I continued, you can stay temporarily. On conditions. She wiped her tears quickly. Yes, anything. You clean, I said. You find a job. You pay for your food. You do not touch my finances. You do not lie. And you face the truth about what you and your brother have done. Her lips trembled. Mom. I'm offering responsibility, I said gently. Not revenge. I don't want to punish you. I want to free you from the choices you've chained yourself to. She began to cry, quietly, sincerely, painfully. And for the first time in a long time. I believed her. But something in my heart warned me. Carver would not be as humble. And he wasn't. 3 days later, Carver barged into my house without knocking. He stormed into the kitchen where I was washing dishes. You had no right, he shouted. I dried my hands calmly. Good afternoon to you too, Carver. You manipulated the bank, he yelled. You're trying to make us look bad. I stared at him in disbelief. Carver, I said slowly, you tried to sell my home behind my back. He waved his hand dismissively. We had a plan. No, I said firmly. You had a scheme. There's a difference. He stepped closer, anger vibrating through his voice. Give us access. Just sign the papers so we can. I held up a single finger. He froze. Because this time, I wasn't the fragile woman he thought he could push around. This time, I had knowledge. I had documentation. And I had nothing left to lose. No, I said. He laughed bitterly. You think you can win? I smiled softly. No, Carver. I already have. I walked to the study, opened the red binder, and placed it on the table in front of him. That, I said, is everything your father documented. Every debt. Every secret. Every selfish choice you and Marin ever hid from me. His face drained of color. He flipped through the pages, each one like another crack in the fragile ego he had built. This isn't fair, he whispered. No, I said calmly. It's the truth. He closed the binder slowly. Then he did something I never expected. He sank into the chair and put his head in his hands. He cried. Not out of regret. Not out of love. Out of fear. He knew what that binder meant. He knew I didn't need revenge. Because the truth was enough to dismantle every lie they'd ever told. And that's when I realized something powerful. Poetic justice doesn't arrive as a hammer. It arrives as a mirror. And some people break at the sight of themselves. That night, I sat alone in the living room, watching the shadows move across the walls. Or I am used to say that every family reaches a crossroads. A moment where you either fall apart or rebuild stronger. My children stood at that crossroads now. And I had a decision to make. Not about punishment. About healing. About boundaries. About reclaiming my life. And as I watched the darkness shift into dawn, I understood exactly what I needed to do. I would not ruin them. I would not expose them. I would not punish them. I would teach them. I would show them what responsibility looks like. What earning trust feels like. What rebuilding requires. I would become the mother they didn't deserve. But the one they still needed. Firm. Fair. Unshakable. And that, I realized, was the real poetic justice. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I don't think anyone forgets the feeling of walking into a room and having every head turn. Not because they missed you, but because they never expected to see you again. That was exactly what happened the night I returned to the Hartwick house. The Hartwick name had belonged to my late husband, Theo, God rest his gentle soul. But as I walked up the path toward the house he'd once painted with his own hands, all I could think about was how fast his children had erased me from the family. The porch lights were on. The curtains were open. And inside, I saw them, my children, celebrating. Celebrating what? I held my breath, stepped closer, and there it was. A cake. A bottle of champagne. My daughter, Lynette, clapping her hands like she'd won a prize. My son, Reeves, rubbing his palms together like a villain from a cheap TV drama. And then I saw it. A fat envelope on the table. The same cream-colored envelope the bank manager had sent me earlier that day. They were celebrating my downfall. I felt the sting of betrayal, sharp, familiar, but somehow brand new. After everything I had done for these kids. After every sacrifice. After every night I stayed awake worrying about them. They were celebrating the idea of me being ruined. I stepped back from the window before they could see my silhouette. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with resolve. If life teaches anything at 55, it's this. When they show you their teeth, don't just run, learn how they bite. And I had learned. All week long, while sleeping in a small rental room far from the comfort of my old home, I'd been quietly gathering pieces of a puzzle I never wanted to see. That puzzle told a story, one of greed, entitlement, and the kind of arrogance only the young and untested dare to carry. I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the recorded message I'd saved. Mrs. Hartwick, the bank manager had said, his voice trembling with shock. There seems to be an issue. Your children tried to access your accounts. They used forged signatures. Illegal documentation. Forged. Illegal. My own children. Trying to loot the life I had built, not just recently, but across decades of effort. While I worked at a restaurant to rebuild myself. While I kept my chin up in humiliation. While I swept floors and greeted customers with a smile, they were trying to steal what little I had left. A slow fire burned through my chest. I lifted my chin, adjusted the scarf around my neck, and stepped away from the window. I didn't come to beg for love. I came to understand the battlefield. But war, real war, is never fought in a single night. I'd need a plan. A gentle one. A quiet one. A patient one. Because revenge is sweetest when it grows from wisdom, not rage. I went back to my rental room, a tiny space above a garage, with peeling wallpaper and a mattress that complained every time I turned. But it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, so was my silence. I closed the door behind me and sat on the edge of the bed. The moonlight spilled through the small window and washed over my hands, hands that had raised 2 children, held a dying husband, struggled through lean years, and still found the strength to keep cooking, keep cleaning, keep loving. Those same hands trembled. Not from fear. From clarity. I took out the notebook I'd bought earlier from a discount store. A simple thing, brown cover, lined pages. And on the first page, I wrote 3 names. Lynette Hartwick. Reeves Hartwick. Felix Calder. Felix wasn't family. Not by blood. But he was the lawyer my children had hired. And he was the man who had assured them, falsely, that he could help transfer my assets without my consent. A man slick enough to think he could outsmart a grieving widow. A man greedy enough to take their money, their confidence, and their ignorance, then gamble it to fill his own pockets. Felix didn't know I now had recordings of him. Recordings he wouldn't want the Bar Association to hear. I drew a 4th name. Mariel Hartwick. Me. The woman they underestimated. The next morning, I woke up early, tied my hair back, and went to the diner where I'd picked up the evening shift. The owner, Mrs. Lorraine, short, round, and full of kindness, looked up when I walked in. "You're early today, sweetheart." I needed something to do with my hands, I said with a small smile. "Work is good therapy," she said. "At least it keeps you moving." And she was right. I scrubbed tables that didn't need scrubbing. I refilled coffee cups only halfway empty. I wiped down menus twice. But my mind wasn't on the diner. It was on the Hartwick house. On the forged signatures. On the lies. On the fact that love, or the illusion of it, had once blinded me to the truth. People like us, women who've lived beyond 50, we know what it means to start over. We know the weight of disappointment. But we also know strength. Not the loud kind. Not the showy kind. The quiet kind that sees betrayal and says, "I'll rise anyway." That night, after my shift, I sat alone in the diner booth with a cup of chamomile tea. The neon lights flickered outside. The world felt still. Then my phone vibrated. A message. From Reeves. "Mom, we need to talk. Call me. It's urgent." Urgent? I let the phone buzz against the table for a moment. Then another text came. "The bank contacted us." "What did you do?" A slow, chilling smile spread across my lips. What did I do? My children were panicking, not because they missed me, not because they regretted what they'd done, but because the bank had turned on them. The bank had called them. Not me. And guilt? No. They weren't capable. Fear? Yes. Absolutely. My finger hovered over the call button. I could answer. I could scream. I could ache. Or I could wait. Wisdom whispered. "Patience, Mariel. Let them twist in their own rope." So I didn't call. Not yet. I finished my tea, left a tip for the waitress covering the night shift, and stepped outside into the breezy darkness. The street smelled like distant rain and old pavement. My heart felt steadier than it had in months. My revenge was not going to be loud. It was not going to be cruel. It was going to be just. Because justice, real justice, comes dressed as truth. And truth always finds a way to rise. As I walked home, my phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail from Lynette. Her voice cracked. "Mom, something's wrong. The bank says we could get in trouble. Please. Call us." Trouble? Oh, honey. You started this fire. Now watch the smoke rise. But that night, as I crawled into my squeaky bed, the moon shining through the thin curtains, something softer nudged my heart. I didn't hate my children. Hurt? Yes. But hate? Never. I wanted justice. Not destruction. I wanted them to learn, the way I had learned throughout my long, bruised life, that greed never wins. Not in the end. Not when you cross someone who knows pain better than they know fear. As I drifted into sleep, I whispered a promise to the darkness. This isn't over. But it will end right. And with that, the next phase of my plan quietly began. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of fresh rain on asphalt and the soft hum of the city stirring to life. I had made a decision during the night, a decision that would finally turn betrayal into wisdom, anger into strategy, and fear into quiet power. I wasn't just going to reclaim my house. I wasn't just going to assert control over my finances. I was going to teach my children a lesson that would last a lifetime, not through shouting, not through punishment, but through revelation. By 7 a.m., I was already at the diner, working the early shift. I greeted the morning customers with a smile that hid the storm building inside me. The rhythm of pouring coffee, stacking plates, wiping counters, it was almost meditative. Almost. I kept thinking about the red binder Orion had left me. Every secret, every ledger, every hidden debt, every fraudulent move my children had made, all recorded, all undeniable. I had proof. I had the law on my side. And now, I had patience. By mid-morning, I had drafted a careful plan. Not revenge for the sake of spite. Revenge in the way wisdom delivers it, clean, direct, and permanent. Step 1, confront. Step 2, reveal. Step 3, let them watch the consequences of their choices unfold. That afternoon, I called Marin. She answered hesitantly, as if she already knew she was walking into a trap. "Mom?" she asked, her voice small. "Marin," I said softly, "come to the house. It's time we talk." Her voice cracked. Okay. Just me?" "No, Carver should be here too." The line went silent. By evening, both of them stood at the front door. They looked older than their years, tense, guilty, but still defiant. Children who believed they were clever. Children who hadn't yet understood that cleverness can be deadly, to themselves. I opened the door and gestured inside. "You can sit," I said, pointing to the living room. My voice was calm. Controlled. A weapon of quiet authority. They both sat, eyes flicking around nervously. I placed the red binder on the coffee table. "Everything you need to know is right here," I said. Their eyes widened. Carver leaned forward. "What is this?" I smiled softly. "This, my son, is the truth. Your lies. Your secret accounts. Your stolen funds. Everything you thought you hid from me, documented. Ledgered. Signed. Dates, times, everything." Marin's face went pale. "Mom, we can explain." "No," I interrupted, calm but firm. "There is no explanation that excuses betrayal. There is only truth. And consequences." They both stared at the binder as if it were a bomb about to detonate. And in a sense, it was. Because from this moment on, the power in our family shifted. I opened the binder slowly and began flipping pages, letting them read silently. Carver's gambling debts, years of losing money he never had, lying about his employment, forging checks. Marin's secret loans, borrowed under Orion's name, never disclosed, the payments overdue and dangerous. The attempts to transfer ownership, legal manipulations, forged documents, complete disregard for the truth. I watched them shrink in their chairs as the evidence spoke for itself. They could not argue with what they were seeing. Every page screamed the truth louder than I ever could. "This," I said softly, "is why you will not touch this house again. This is why you will not access any of my accounts. This is why, for the first time in your lives, you will see what your choices cost you." Carver tried to speak. "Mom, we can fix it." I shook my head. "Fix it? Do you understand what fixing it means? Repaying debts? Rebuilding trust? Relearning integrity?" Their faces fell. And in that moment, I knew something vital had happened. They had finally seen me, not as a mother to be manipulated, but as a force they had underestimated. 2 days later, I contacted the bank directly. I spoke with the manager, a nervous man named Mr. Dalton, who had previously assisted my children in their schemes. "Mr. Dalton," I said, calm and precise, "I want everything frozen in my name. All transfers, all accounts, all properties. Any attempt by my children to access funds will be flagged immediately. Notify me of any movement within 24 hours. He hesitated. "Mrs. Hartwick, they are your children." I smiled. "I am aware. And that is why the law will protect me. Not sentiment." By the end of the week, the bank confirmed everything was secure. They could no longer touch the accounts. The house, the hidden investments, even small savings accounts, everything was mine. And for the first time in months, I felt a quiet triumph. 2 weeks later, I received a visit from a lawyer I had never met, Ms. Helena Voss. She introduced herself politely, her eyes sharp behind thin glasses. "Mrs. Hartwick," she said, "I believe we need to discuss your children's financial liabilities. It appears they attempted something illegal, and the bank has asked me to ensure you understand your rights." I smiled faintly. "Yes, I do." She handed me a file. Inside were formal legal notices, Carver and Marin's fraudulent attempts at transfer, their concealed loans, and their ongoing debts. All documented. All undeniable. I glanced at the folder, then looked out the window at the darkening sky. My children had believed they could manipulate me. They had believed I was powerless. Instead, I had learned that life's lessons, painful, humiliating, and slow as they may be, can become the ultimate armor. And as I sat there, I realized the most satisfying part of all. They hadn't even touched the money. They hadn't even come close to stealing a single cent. The universe had delivered justice quietly. Painfully. Perfectly. That night, after dinner, I sat alone on the porch. The stars were brilliant, the air crisp, and my heart finally at ease. I whispered to the darkness, "You took me for granted. You underestimated me. You believed a mother's love made her weak. But love is strength. Knowledge is power. And patience is vengeance." And I smiled. Because I realized something beautiful. Revenge is not always violent. Sometimes, it is wisdom. Sometimes, it is letting the truth shine so brightly that it burns the illusions of those who dared betray you. Sometimes, it is surviving, thriving, and teaching without breaking a single law, a single heart, or a single promise. I walked back inside. My children were silent. They understood, finally, that the woman they had underestimated was no longer the same. And in that moment, I didn't feel anger. I felt triumph. Quiet, deep, everlasting. I had turned betrayal into poetic success. Pain into wisdom. Weakness into power. And that is how you survive. How you win. How you thrive. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. The morning was quiet, almost sacred. Sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors of my house, catching dust in a way that made it glow like tiny golden stars. I moved slowly through the rooms, touching furniture I had once polished with my own hands, inhaling the faint scent of my late husband's favorite candles, and realizing something profound: I had survived. Truly survived. Survived betrayal. Survived greed. Survived the kind of pain that chips away at your soul if you let it. And now, I had a choice: how to live the rest of my life. That afternoon, both Marin and Carver came to the house again. Their faces were pale, tired, and wary. Gone was the smug arrogance they had worn like armor. Now, they were humbled. "Mom," Marin started, her voice barely above a whisper. Carver's mouth moved, but no words came out. I gestured for them to sit in the living room. The red binder was open on the coffee table, as if it were a shield protecting the truth. "I want you to understand something," I began. My voice was calm, deliberate, soft but unwavering. "Every choice you made to deceive me, every attempt to steal, every lie, you are responsible for it. Not me. Not the law. Not the universe. You." Their heads nodded slowly, shame washing over them in waves. They were beginning to grasp the weight of their actions, finally realizing that life has a way of making sure every choice has a consequence. "I could be angry," I continued. "I could punish you. But anger solves nothing. Punishment does not teach wisdom. What you need, what all children eventually need, is understanding." They were silent. Waiting. "So," I said, "you will live here under one condition: you will respect me, my home, and my life. You will work to repair the damage you've done. You will take responsibility, and you will learn from this. Anything less, and the doors will close, permanently." Marin's eyes filled with tears. We understand, Mom. We do." Carver's jaw tightened, and I could see the wheels turning in his mind. He hated it, yes. But he also knew there was no way out of this lesson. And that was justice, the quiet kind that shapes character instead of breaking it. Over the next few weeks, I watched my children work. Marin got a part-time job at a local boutique. She had never managed money before, and it humbled her. Carver, stubborn as ever, started helping with minor repairs around the house, learning patience, responsibility, and accountability the hard way. Meanwhile, I focused on myself. I expanded the diner side business I had started, met new people, learned small investments Orion had quietly left me to manage, and found a new joy in financial independence. At 58, I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving. And it was beautiful. One evening, while sitting on the porch and watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey. I had learned more in the past year than I had in decades. Betrayal can cut deep, but it can also sharpen your mind. Age is not weakness, it is wisdom forged in fire. Survival is not about hiding, it is about using every skill, every lesson, every ounce of courage you have. Revenge is sweetest when it is calm, measured, and just, not angry and reckless. I closed my eyes and whispered into the golden dusk. "You underestimated me. You thought love made me weak. You thought my age made me fragile. But I am more than the sum of my sacrifices. I am the sum of every lesson I've learned, every hardship I've endured, every betrayal I have survived. And that is power." The wind brushed my face as if affirming every word. Weeks later, I received a letter in the mail from the bank. It was a simple piece of paper, stamped and official. "All accounts secure under the name of Mariel Hartwick. Any attempts at unauthorized access will be subject to legal action. Signed, the bank." I smiled. My children could have panicked, run, or tried to manipulate me again, but I had left them with the tools of accountability, and they were learning. And for the first time, I realized. Poetic justice isn't about punishment. It's about empowerment. It's about surviving with dignity, thriving with intelligence, and letting truth reveal itself in its own time. That night, I wrote in my journal. To anyone watching this, do not let betrayal break you. Do not let age define your strength. Every lesson you learn in life, no matter how painful, is a tool for survival. Keep moving, keep learning, and never underestimate yourself. Life will challenge you. People may betray you. But knowledge, patience, and resilience are your armor. Use them wisely, and you will rise. Always. I placed the journal on my bedside table and looked out the window at the quiet suburban street. The lights in the other houses twinkled like stars brought to earth. I felt calm, proud, and invincible, not because I had defeated my children, but because I had reclaimed my life. I had turned betrayal into wisdom. Pain into growth. Fear into courage. And that, my friends, is how a woman survives.